والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ask Huda. I'm your host, Jamil Rashid, and I have with me today, I'd like to welcome back with me today, Sheikh Muhammad Salah. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much for being with us, Sheikh.
My pleasure.
Okay, let's remind you of our telephone numbers. The country code is 202, then it's 38555, 248 or 249. Email address is askask@huda.tv. And please, if you do call today, call early. And secondly, if you do call, please do turn down your television sets. Sheikh, let's start with this question here from Sister Nihal from Egypt. She's asking, who are the people of A'raf, as mentioned in the Quran, Sheikh?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala nabiyyihi wa mustafa Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. All praise due to Allah, we praise Him and we seek His help. Whomsoever Allah guides is the truly guided one, and whomsoever Allah leaves astray, no one can show him guidance. May the best peace and blessings be upon Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Obviously there is a whole chapter in the Quran that is the 7th surah of the Quran, which is named after this title, Al-A'raf. And in Christianity they call it the purgatories. And Al-A'raf is an Arabic word. It's in the plural sense. Its singular is urf, similar to the crown on top of the head of the rooster, because it is elevated. So when we say the urf to the land, it is an elevated or a high land. We call it urf. Al-A'raf, as it is mentioned in Surah Al-A'raf, the 7th chapter of the Quran, is referring to the wall or the mountain or the high land, the high place that's standing and separating between heaven and the far of hell. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this surah, وَبَيْنَهُمَا حِجَابٌ, and between both of them there is a barrier. Between heaven and hell there is a barrier. وَعَلَى الْأَعْرَافِ رِجَالٌ, so that barrier happens to be Al-A'raf, the purgatories. And there are certain people who will be hanging on Al-A'raf, and they will have an amazing access, very strange one. They will have an access to the right to see the dwellers of heaven, enjoying, being delighted with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon them in heaven, of the unlimited access to joys and blessings. And then they will look to their left to examine the torment and the torture of the dwellers of fire as well. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-A'raf, وَبَيْنَهُمَا حِجَابٌ, between both the fire of hell and heaven there is a barrier. وَعَلَى الْأَعْرَافِ رِجَالٌ يَعْرِفُونَ كُلًّا بِسِيمَاهُمْ. So there will be certain people on Al-A'raf, the purgatories, who recognize each party, each dwellers of Al-Jannah or of An-Nar with their signs, with their symptoms. وَنَادَوْا أَصْحَابَ الْجَنَّةِ أَنْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ لَمْ يَدْخُلُوهَا وَهُمْ يَطْمَعُونَ. So in this verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that they will call upon the dwellers of Al-Jannah, and as well as they will address the people of the far of hell as well. So when they address the people of Al-Jannah, will say, Salamun alaykum, peace be with you, even though they have not entered Al-Jannah, Ashabul A'raf. Who are Ashabul A'raf, or people who will be hanging between heavens and the far of hell on top of Al-A'raf? In numerous verses in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains to us that on the day of accountability, on the day of judgment, every person's deeds, good and bad, will be outweighed against each other, or weighed against each other. Whosoever's good deeds will outweigh the bad deeds will be saved. فَأَمَّا مَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ. As far as those whose good deeds will be heavy, have a heavy weight in the scale and outweigh their bad deeds, ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ, they will experience a pleasant life in paradise. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. And as far as for those whose good deeds will be very light versus their bad deeds would outweigh the good ones, then their dwelling place will be, and their abode will be, the fire of hell. May Allah protect all of us and all the believers. So what happens to those who are hanging in between? many of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ibn Abbas and many of the-tabi'een, Sa'id ibn Jubair and others, informed us that Ahlul A'raf or Ashabul A'raf are the people whose good deeds and bad deeds are even, 50-50. So basically they will be hanging in between in order to narrate to us, as the surah explained to us, the beautiful fate of Ahlul Jannah in contrast with the awful, terrible, horrible fate of Ahlul Nar. The surah goes on and on to explain to us the dialogue which will go on between each party, then Ahlul A'raf addressing both of them, and eventually, as many of the narrations indicated, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the end, by His mercy, will shower them, Ahlul A'raf, with His mercy and will dismiss them to His paradise. So they will not end up in fire, rather they will end up in heaven. But after we enjoy the dialogue which is presented in Surah Al-A'raf between the three parties. And Allah knows best.
Barakallah fiik. Okay, we have a question here from Brother Muhammad from the United Arab Emirates, and he's asking about removing certain hair below the lower lip for the man. Is this considered part of the beard, and are you allowed to trim this part, Sheikh?
I have a comment on the way the question was asked first before answering the question itself. I wish the question was presented the way that you just asked, when you said whether this considered from the beard or not. But when somebody says that, I have noticed some shuyukh are shaving or whatever, the Quran teaches us the following. In Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اجْتَنِبُوا كَثِيرًا مِنَ الظَّنِّ إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٌ. O you who believe, avoid much of suspicion or wrong thinking about others, assumptions, because much of this dhann is sin. What if it is not true? What if those shuyukh are not really shaving? What if this is their natural look? I mean, some people do not grow hair in certain areas. What about this? If you see a sheikh who does not have a beard at all, some of my colleagues do not have beards. Basically, this is natural. So would you right away say that he's shaved, I'm not going to listen to him, etc.? So verifying or asking or trying to find excuses and giving them the benefit of doubt is the attitude of the true seekers of knowledge. Is the behavior of the sincere and righteous believers. Because it happens. It is natural. The host has a heavy and thick beard. And the presenter maybe has very short one or little, because this is his nature. It happens. So accordingly, we need to keep in mind that we should not generalize, we should not point fingers and say, what about this sheikh or this person? Or do not, unless if you know him personally, then you should ask him personally. As far as the hair that grows beneath the lips, it is a part of the hair as well, and the facial hair from here until beneath the chin is also included in the hair of the beard, which should be preserved as well.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Okay, next we have Sister Aisha from Oman. Sister, you're live on Ask Huda. Your question, please. Sister Aisha, are you with us?
Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
A woman who adheres to full hijab, niqab, and her husband is in prison. She has no mahram to take her places, and she would like to go for ladies' classes for Arabic, because she's a revert. She would like to learn Arabic. She would like to know if there's a sin on her if she goes driving alone or by taxi, since she has nobody to take her. She has already looked for another sister to go with her, but unfortunately she could not find. And her husband is asking her, please find opinion of a scholar. If the sheikh tells you it's okay because you cannot go with anybody else, you can go to seek learning Arabic, inshallah.
Are these classes held in the same city or town, or travel distance?
Yes, it's in the same city. It's like 10 minutes driving.
Okay.
Okay.
Jazakallah.
Barakallah fiik. Sister Aisha, they're from Oman. Jazakallah khair, sister, for that question. Okay, let's get back to some of these questions here. Sister Abdul Rahman from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Explain to us a familiar story that we hear. And we all heard it. I mean, When I got married, I heard it. Everybody hears it. It's the story of the mother-in-law. Okay, so they say to you that the daughters-in-law are going to have a hard time. The mother-in-law is very hard. And it does happen, and we hear it so many times, that sometimes she's abusive, say, mentally abusive, the way she oppresses the daughters-in-law. Even if the daughter-in-law is very faithful, obedient, she's still harsh with her. And the son doesn't do anything, he lets the mother get away with this. And this happens a lot, maybe in some certain parts of the world. The sister says, what do we do if you're somebody who's in that situation, in that relationship? How do you deal with this?
Why is it always the mother-in-law problem? Why isn't it the daughter-in-law problem? It could be this way. I mean, recently in Texas Dawah Conference, I have been asked a few weeks ago the same question. And it was a lecture presented to a great gathering of just ladies and so forth. So when they were very hyper asking this question, I said, okay, every woman who's sitting in this hall is either married or about to get married one day, right? So you expect to have children and you long to have children. So that means one day, God willing, each and every one of you will become a mother-in-law. Eventually, each and every one of you will become a mother-in-law. How would you like your daughter-in-law to treat you? There is a conflict of interest. The mother always looks at her son as, I made him. I bore him for 9 months. I breastfed him for 2 years. I changed his diaper for so long. I fed him. I looked after him when he was sick until he grew up, until he graduated. I made him. Then a lady would just come and take this fruit like that, really. So she expects some sort of appreciation, acknowledgement that thank you, mom, for giving me this gift. And indeed, it is a gift. Every wife has to understand that if her husband is very decent and nice, if he's very generous, if he's so beautiful, it is because of his parents. His parents, 99%, made him like that. They raised them up properly. They made him treat people nicely. So he is nice because of his parents. So the daughter-in-law owes all of that to her parents-in-law. Why always the mother-in-law? Because she hangs around most of the time, and in many cultures, the mother-in-law insists on living, or if it is the oldest son, that he insists on having his mother-in-law living with him, and this is a beautiful feeling. So whenever there is a friction, that would require her son or your husband some wisdom to diffuse this conflict, even with sometimes not telling the truth, making up things with a good intention. Yes, it is permissible. So if he goes to his mother and says that my wife bought you this gift, he bought it himself. And he buys it and he gives it to his wife and says, would you give it to my mom? And says that I cannot thank you enough, etc. It's a human nature that exchanging gifts increase love and develop love, even among those who do not get along. So when you do that on a regular basis, even if you want to give a gift to your mother, give it to her through your daughter-in-law. Make sure that if your wife cooks a nice meal or whatever, that your mother will begin eating before everybody else, etc. This is the Islamic behavior. This is the Islamic attitude. And in the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ informed us about the 3 people who were in prison and got stuck in a cave, you remember the story? And each one of them asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala via the means of some of their good deeds. One of them said, oh Allah, I had elder parents and I have my wife and kids, so I used to take my sheep to graze. And one day there was no food, so I came late. And after I milked, my parents were already asleep. My kids were starving. My wife was hungry. I did not give them the milk before my parents, even though they were asleep. So I stood next to their bed until it was dawn, until they got up. Then I started with them. So after they drank, I turned it over to my family. Oh Allah, have I done that for your sake? Give us a way out of here. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them a slight opening, and so forth. So keeping your duty towards your parents is one of the most marvelous deeds after worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is indeed a mean of worship as well. My advice to every wife who happens to be a daughter-in-law, her mother-in-law is alive. whether she's living with her or living abroad. Please treat her as you like to be treated, because one day you will be a mother-in-law, and this is all a credit. So if you treat her nicely, inshallah, your daughter-in-law one day or your son-in-law one day will treat you nicely as well. But if you're harsh to her, this is what you will get one day. So whatever you would like to get, deal with your current mother-in-law likewise. I'm not saying that all the mothers-in-law and all the mothers are always nice and sweet. Sometimes they're very biased. Sometimes they're very prejudiced. Sometimes you like to control everything. At that, unfortunately, the wife cannot do much. The person who can do a lot is the husband. He has to step in. He has to make certain that he would diffuse any problem from taking place and condole or entertain his wife and assure her that he loves her so much. It is just a matter of being dutiful and kind to his mother. So he should not transgress on the rights of each or either one of them, because he has rights towards his mother, he has rights towards his wife and his family. And we all know that in Islam, that the wife has the right to have an independent housing if it is possible. And if they agree to that from the beginning. But situations might happen that his father passed away, no one is there to look after his mother, so he has to bring her to his house to live with them for how long? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So his duties will double and will increase. The wife has to understand that and has to put herself in her mother-in-law's situation, because that could happen to her, and eventually that will happen to her. And she will receive the same kind of treatment when she becomes a mother-in-law one day. This is a very sensitive and touchy subject, and unfortunately culture has a lot to do with it. In many cases, even prior to marriage, that the parents would educate their daughter as how to treat her mother-in-law, that you have to be stiff and harsh from the beginning. You have to teach her a lesson. You have to prove yourself, or otherwise she will eat your life, etc. But if you listen to the advices of our predecessors, when a mother is preparing her daughter, the bride, to go to her husband's house, advising her how to take good care of her husband, and his parents as well will understand that Islam is the most beautiful faith and religion, that it encompasses every aspect in our life, and it treats every single problem that could arise, whether on the marital level, individual level, or on the community level as well.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Okay, next we have Mrs. Amjad from the United Arab Emirates. Sister, your life on Ask Huda. Your question, please.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes. My question is, recently I've started go to a course which aims at making us understand the meanings of the Quran. And in this we have to learn the word-for-word translation in our language, be it Hindi or Urdu or English, any language. And they make us memorize the root words and tajweed they are doing together with this.
Understood.
And then she gives us a brief tafsir of the ayat which we have learned today. The one who is giving this tafsir, her lessons are uploaded on the website, and she is an alim. And we have to do this at home and give a test weekly once. The one who takes our test and asks us questions like, what did you learn from this ayat? And how will you change your life after getting to know the meanings of these ayat? Who discusses these things with us, she is not an alim. So I just want to clarify, is this okay? And then one of my friends who is very actively involved in dawah, mashallah, she says that learning the Quran in this way is not going to really help much. Because the reason she says is, understanding the Quran is only for the ulama, alim, not for the common people. And then the second reason she says is, Allah gives hidayat based on wanting to get hidayat and fikr, and not because of knowledge, just ilm. And thirdly, hearing which I was really scared is, like, the more knowledge you gain, it will be more difficult for you to answer in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You may not be able to really act upon the complete knowledge which you gain, and which I too acknowledge that I wouldn't be able to, but I just hope that doing this, I'll be able to get some positive changes in my life. So I'm really worried, should I do this or not? Because this is the Quran, this is not a joke. So please advise me, Sheikh.
Okay. Jazakallah khair, Mrs. Amjad there from the United Arab Emirates. Jazakallah khair for those questions. There were actually 4 questions there, not 3, but Jazakallah khair for those questions, and we do appreciate you trusting us with that. It's a very important topic, and we'll try to get to it in this episode. Sister Wafa Sheikh from Egypt asked a question about the situation in Gaza. We've been reporting on it, as you know, and it's something that we're taking very importantly. She says this particular situation, the Muslim world is waking up to its responsibilities. But how do we go about utilizing this incident to really wake up the masses to knowing that we're one ummah, we have to care for our brothers and sisters, and we really have to learn more about what's going on around the world to our brothers and sisters. How important is it, Sheikh?
As you asked this, I just remember I was watching today on the CNN some interviews with some Zionist and government officials in Israel. And I was so amazed at the way they twist the facts and the truth. And they say sweet words. And behind these sweet words, there is poison. And unfortunately, amongst us, there are some fool people who like to be fooled. Let me put it this way. So after this mass destruction of a whole nation, of killing, we're talking about more than 1,500 human lives, most of them are civilians, more than 1/3 of them are innocent minors and kids, awful pictures the entire world get to see. And there is over 5,000 injured people, some of them lost their eyes, their limbs, etc. They're talking about what? We are a peaceful nation, and we're longing for peace, and we're going to be very active. Political analysts were talking about that they failed to achieve their objectives concerning running as a party, whether Delhi Code or whatever, for elections. So they failed via the military move. Now they're talking about peace. Whether military activities or politics, it's just a means of achieving votes of their own people on the account of the innocent lives of Muslims. Muslims have to realize that the conflict between us and the Zionists or the Israelis is not temporary, and it will not be sorted out or solved in a meeting or two. No, it's a matter that is based on religion. With the verses which I quoted from their own testament, Joshua and Deuteronomy, we got to understand the Zionist mentality and what they are after. So in order to plan right, you have to understand how your enemy is thinking. In Arabic, they say that I would rather have a smart enemy than having a foolish friend. Unfortunately, most of our allies are foolish. They think, okay, cool, our goal has been achieved, now we cease fire, and now back to track. What track? Our brothers and sisters in Gaza until now are not receiving the proper supply. And who's going to distribute the fund? Is it all about raising some fund to reconstruct the town once again, where most of the cost will be encountered by Muslims again for the reconstruction? What about making up for the lost lives, for the injured people who have to spend the rest of their lives without their eyesight, without their hearing, without some of their limbs? Who can compensate for all of that? Is it that easy and fast that we forget and move forward and start talking about peace? That is not called peace. This is called submission. This is a sign of weakness, and this is a sign of that there are people who are interested in hanging on to their seats, to their positions. They don't want to give up. They don't want to leave. So they're willing to do anything to serve their masters. But in reality, while we understand and acknowledge the first fact that those who died amongst Muslims in this massacre are, by the leave of Allah, martyrs and shuhada. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed us in the Quran that they are alive, enjoying the delight which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with in heaven. This is fact. And those who died amongst the enemies are eternally in the fire of hell. And those who assisted the enemies in their aggression against Muslims are amongst them. Those who have made friendship and allied with the enemies against Muslims, they should not consider them They should not consider themselves amongst Muslims anymore. Rather, they are with their allies. People will be resurrected on the Day of Judgment with those whom they used to like, with those whom they used to support, especially when they supported them against Muslims. By Allah, if it was not even Muslims, if it was an oppressed nation who do not believe in Allah, period, then it is not permissible for a believer to support the aggressors against the weak ones without any right. Rather, it is our duty to support the truth and to start establishing justice. So the story is not over yet. And the Israeli aggression will never end, will never be over until they are utterly defeated, as the Quran tells us. Killing many of their prophets, trying to kill the Prophet ﷺ several times, to the point that they poison his food, etc. All these attempts informs us about their nature. As a matter of fact, just on Friday, I was reviewing some of the statements of some of the Israeli leaders. Some of them, their president said that we fight, that means we exist. This is their mentality. As long as we're fighting, that we exist. Some of them said, if there is no fight, we will have to pay money to some Arabic nation here or there to initiate a war or fight with them in order to show that we do exist. So you can imagine whom you're dealing with. As I said before, we're dealing with sick people. This is a sick mentality. And if the teachings which I quoted before from the Old Testament is what they believe in, then their God is no God, is the devil himself. We have to prepare ourselves steady, consistent, and we have to be determined that wallahi, by Allah, in whose hand is my soul and our souls, we will never ever achieve victory as long as we are away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to reconcile our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to read His book. We have to teach it to our children. We have to understand that those guys are enemies, are no friends. So those who are sitting on tables, importing food and exporting clothes and etc., they should consider themselves with them, not with the Muslims. This is what the Quran says. That وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوهُ تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. The Muslims should support one another against their enemies, not the other way around. As I stated a few weeks back, this crisis really was a big test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to distinguish who is the truthful ones from those who are following the falsehood, from those who are the fifth column, those who are following the propaganda, are dying to gain some worldly insignificant material, whether a position or some money in bank account or some journey here or there. Their dwelling place is awaiting them is an-nar, is fire. We're very proud of our brothers and sisters who stood fast in the face of the worst enemy on earth, the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I said, this is not over. So we should seize this opportunity to start preparing ourselves. How much? And we don't have enough. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not ask us to go to the moon or have nuclear weapons in order to defeat the enemies. Rather, look at the beauty of our deen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَعِدُّوا لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ مِنْ قُوَّةٍ وَمِنْ رِبَاطِ الْخَيْلِ تُرْهِبُونَ بِهِ عَدُوَّ اللَّهِ وَعَدُوَّكُمْ. All what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking from us is just to prepare as much as you can. Is to prepare as much as you can. And we have seen, they have utilized every possible mean to defeat innocent, unarmed nation. And what happened? They withdrew without achieving a single goal of their goals which they stated in the beginning. They have achieved nothing. According to the military strategy, that means they have lost. Why? Even though the casualty is a great deal amongst Muslims versus them. But what happens is, when you set some goals or objectives to achieve prior to initiating any battle or any war, and you end up achieving none of them, that means you've lost. You are a loser. So alhamdulillah, those brothers and sisters who stood fast during this dilemma for more than 3 weeks, proved to the entire world, especially to the Muslims, wake up. You're strong enough if you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on your side. In addition to, you have enough military weapons and machines more than your enemies. Unfortunately, you're saving them to rust, not to be utilized, but in most cases against your own people. So the solution is just one solution, and there is no other alternative, is to make a sulh and a new contract and a covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to ask His help. If you support the deen of Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will support you. If Allah forsakes you, who else besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give you victory or helps you?
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Okay, Brother Zubair from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Brother, you're live on Ask Huda. Your question, please. Brother Zubair, are you with us?
Yes. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Brothers, I have a question to Shaykh that what is the actual obligatory thing regarding the beard? I know there has been a lot of questions regarding this and a lot of comments I'm hearing about the people, but I just want to know exactly whether beard is really an obligation on every Muslim. And the second question is, what is the thing about the length of the beard and about the trimming of the beard below the neck, around the cheeks? What exactly is the thing we have to follow in this? Jazakallah khair.
Barakallah feek. Brother Zubair there from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Okay, with this we're going to take a short break and inshallah return in a couple of minutes. Please do stay with us on Ask Huda. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You know, sometimes it's important to take a break. We need to take a break. Take a break from what? From the everyday things to look at what we're really doing as Muslims. That's why we said we really need to have this program for you and for me to take a break right here on Huda TV. Stay with us because we've got a lot coming up on Take a Break.
And if you look into the early tafsir, early exegesis of the Quran, you will find that all the Mufassirin were trying to find out where are these 7 earths. Earthquakes, natural or artificial, can delineate the boundaries between 7 different zones within the earth. The conclusion that we have 7 different layers within the earth came to not only in the 20th century. The true believer would prostrate down in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The blessings of that prostration will reach the 7th earth.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to this episode of Ask Huda. If you want to give us a call, do so on the number below. It should be on your screen there. Country code is 202. Then it's 38555, 248 or 249. Of course, you can send us an email, especially if you've got an email which is slightly detailed. You can send one to ask@huda.tv. Sheikh, Sister Aisha from Oman asked a question regarding a sister, somebody who's aiming to learn Islam, learn certain parts of her deen. So she wants to learn Arabic to facilitate this. She's somebody who wears a proper hijab, she says. Her husband is in prison, so she has no mahram at all with her. And she's a new Muslim to Islam. She wants to know, can her friend, this sister, travel a distance of about 10 minutes to a class in her neighborhood? She's tried to find other sisters to travel with, but found nobody. Is this sister allowed to travel?
Seeking religious knowledge is a necessity and is a requirement. It is due upon every Muslim, male or female. And since there is no contradiction, I mean, she does not have to leave out of town. She does not have to travel a travel distance. And it is within the city, as a sister said, 10 minutes. Then it is permissible, and I believe in Allah knows best. It is highly recommended for her. May Allah bless you and your husband for your concern. Even though you guys are revert and you're very concerned about what's lawful and unlawful. So may Allah bless you and increase your iman and your sincerity. And go ahead, sister, and seek knowledge. May Allah facilitate with this knowledge a way for you to paradise.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Okay, next one, brother Rafiq from the United Arab Emirates. Brother, you're live and ask Huda, your question, please. The United Arab Emirates. Brother, you're live and ask Huda, your question, please. Okay, brother, you've got to turn down that television set if possible.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Brother Rafiq, could you turn down the television set, please?
Yeah.
I don't like listen to my own voice.
Thank you. Hello.
Yes, brother.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
If a person dies, will his...
Now mute your television set completely.
Hello? Yeah, you can hear me?
I can hear you, but I think you need to mute.
We can hear ourselves
Yeah,
too.
you've got to mute your television set if possible. You've got to turn down the volume.
Okay. If a person dies, will his children, will there be inheritance for their grandfather's properties?
Grandfather's property. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Brother Rafiq from the United Arab Emirates. And I don't want to use Brother Rafiq as an example, but he's going to be an example today. Please, if you do call us today, or any other time on Ask Huda, please do turn down your television. As you can see, so much interference, and it doesn't sound very good. And I don't like listening to my own voice, actually, so that's another reason. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah fikum. Sheikh, I've got this question here from Mrs. Amjad from the United Arab Emirates. I'm very happy, actually, for the question, because it's one which shows that brothers and sisters are trying their hardest to learn Islam, like you said. And they're going to a lot of strengths, and they've got into a lot of areas now. She says that I'm trying to take some classes in the meaning of the Qur'an. I'm set homework. I'm looking in the translation. I've been taught the tajweed, the root words. I'm going into the tafsir. The person who's testing me sometimes is not actually an alim, like she said, but rather somebody who may help the alim. Is this person allowed to test me? That's the first question, and I'll give you all the questions. The second question is that somebody, a friend of hers, has given advice, and this friend of hers is a sister who's a caller to Islam. She said, this is not the correct way to learn the Qur'an. Actually, it's not going to help you much, because the Qur'an, learning in this way, detailed way, is not for the common people, rather it's for the scholars. And she also said that hidayah doesn't come from learning knowledge, rather hidayah is from Allah. And last but not least, the more knowledge you learn, the more you're going to be questionable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the question is here, what does the sister do? She seems that she's in a bit of a twist here. She doesn't know, she's learning the Qur'an, yet she's got all these things going through her head.
Well, first of all, I would highly advise you not to listen to this lady anymore. This is a very negative way of thinking and paying an advice. I'm afraid that she falls in the category of those who hinder people from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is totally against what the Qur'an teaches us, what the sound sunnah Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam teaches us. The Qur'an says, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Your level and your rank before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be according to how much knowledge you have. Furthermore, He taught us in Surah Taha to say, and He taught the Prophet ﷺ to say, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying, oh my Lord, increase me in knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ said in the sound hadith, which is narrated by Uthman ibn Affan, may Allah be pleased with him, he said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. Look at the word خَيْرُكُمْ, the best of all of you, the best of all of you. Has nothing to do with the morphology, has nothing to do with your bank account, with your house, with your car, what kind of life you're living. Basically, one thing. The best of all of you is the one who learns the Qur'an and teaches it to others. So in order to teach, you have to learn. Learn what and teach what? The Quran. Learn the Quran and all the related sciences to the Quran and teach that to others. In the beautiful hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, by Allah, indeed, Allah the Almighty by Himself, the angels, and the dwellers of the heavens and the earth, even the ants in their fissures and their holes, even the fish in the sea, لا يصلون على معلم الناس الخير. يصلون, they're praying, they're invoking Allah. So Allah is sending His blessing. The angels and the rest of the creatures, as I mentioned in the hadith, are invoking Allah accordingly to bless. To bless whom? Those who teach people righteousness. Is there any righteous teaching more than the Quran and the related sciences to the Quran, such as the hadith, the tafsir, the recitation of the Quran, etc.? This is indeed a very passive, rather negative way of thinking and advising. So I advise you to give the sister this answer, if you can record it, or advise her to listen to it. If she does not comply with that, I would highly advise you to sever your relations with her, because this is a person who would stop you and hinder you from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, said that people are more in need for knowledge than their basic need for eating and drinking. How? He said people might need to eat or drink once a day, twice a day. But their need for the knowledge, for the religious knowledge, is with every breath. With every breath. Your entire life is about how to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have utilized a perfect grammar when He said في سورة الذاريات وَمَا خَلَقَتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. This is an exception. Exclusively, He says, I have not created the jinn and the ins, but exclusively just to worship me. How do we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowledge? أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَى. You want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala according to your hawa, you end up worshipping your hawa, your mind, your desire, your logic. But we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we show our sincere servitude to Allah through what He teaches us, the way that pleases Him, not according to our hawa, our intelligence, or our logic. So this is another very, very important fact. So continue, proceed on seeking knowledge, and I don't have to go through the process which you just mentioned and then Brother Jamil reiterated. This is a fantastic way of learning, to learn each word and the root word, its derivatives and its meaning, memorize it, learn its different meanings in different tenses. This is a very academic and a fantastic way. As far as who's testing you, I would not comment on that, because I would leave that to the sheikha or the scholar who's teaching you. They know better about the situation. With regards to your incident, I just recalled another similar incident where I was teaching once in one Islamic center in the States, a group of my colleagues, doctors, the same way. Then another doctor who happened to be of Arabic roots walked in and he said, why are you guys wasting your time? We don't need to bother to learn the meanings of the Quran in Arabic or learn how to read it. You can just read it like you're reading a newspaper. Bottom line, what you need to do is read the English meaning, okay, grasp on the overall meaning. You can even feel it yourself. This is satanic way of thinking. So what happened? He's trying to hinder people from learning. So they neglected him. Instead, they continue persistently and consistently. On daily basis, once every weekend, we have a longer halqa, etc. In a few years, I was just visiting a few weeks ago, one of them was leading the prayer, and I almost shed tears, because I noticed, mashallah, that those who are sincere in learning, now there is no much difference between us and them, because knowledge is the same. And in order to learn, in order to be knowledgeable, you have to learn. This lady was only right in one statement, even though she did not really mean it. She said that the more you learn, the more you will be accountable before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is very obvious. So do you think that by not learning, you will not be accountable? This is totally false. So proceed on and encourage as many ladies. We're lacking behind in educating our females. We encourage all the sisters to seek knowledge, to learn the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I would end up with this, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِ الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. He's asking a rhetoric question. Say, O Muhammad, are they equal? Are they even similar? Not even nearby? Whom? Those who know and those who do not know. Obviously not. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all amongst the true seekers of knowledge.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, next up, Sister Aisha from Bahrain. Sister, you're live and ask her your question, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
My question is regarding my husband's duties towards his parents. We are living away from our home country, and his parents are in our home country. And his mother, usually she doesn't stay well. Most of the time she's sick. So whenever we visit them or we talk to them on the phone, they are very supportive. Like they've never asked us to leave the job and come back and stay with them. They are happy that we are doing well here and our kids are doing well here. So I'm always concerned about this thing that my husband, he can just support them through giving them some money. My question is that like in this situation when she is not well, so what should we do? Like we should leave the job, everything, and go and stay with them, because my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, they're alone in our home country. Nobody is with them.
Okay.
I would like to thank you, sister, for your concern and for asking this question in this very episode in order to show the viewers that there are wives who are very happy with their parents-in-law. Not only that, they're supportive and they are asking how can we help more. So thank you so much for calling, and inshallah we'll answer the question in order.
Jazakallah khair, sister. Okay, let's get back to one of these questions, and that's from Brother Zubair Sheikh from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We were speaking about the beard, and I think he's carrying on and speaking about this. And he's saying, what's the obligation? What's the minimum requirement maybe of what a beard is? Is it something that we have to keep? He says there's a lot of questions. It's true, we do get a lot of questions on the topic of the beard. The length of the beard, can it be trimmed around the neck, around the cheek? What's the answer for this kind of question, Sheikh? I want to know comprehensively, what is the obligation of the beard?
Let's sort this out first. Is keeping or growing the beard a religious duty? Yes, it is. So does it mean that is it a must? Well, according to the collective references, the sound hadith, and some references from the Quran as well, and the opinions of the vast majority of the fuqaha, it is a must. Because when the Prophet ﷺ says, أَعْفُ اللِّحَ, or save the beards and trim the mustaches, then the command normally, according to the scholars of the principles of fiqh, will be directed towards a must, unless if there is another related reference or evidence that would divert the command from being a must to maybe just mere recommended. Did the Prophet ﷺ save his beard? Did his companions do likewise, all of them? Yes, they did. Do we have enough sound references? Yes, we do. So we do have some references. Maybe some of the scholars said it is just sunnah mu'akkada. Yes, we do have some of the scholars, maybe Imam al-Shafi'i and others said it is highly recommended. But the vast majority said it is a wajib. So that means it is a must to save the beard for the men. The difference of opinions would be regarding the length of the beard, whether to trim it or not to trim it, etc. So now we're moving from an area to another. First of all, we agreed that it is a necessity for every male to save the beard. And there is nothing wrong with that, even if you're living in the West, that if you happen to fly to the US, the first thing you will see at JFK, people with long beards, very long to their chest. These are the Jews. And women who are wearing scarves. My first appearance in New York City more than a decade ago, when I saw on Saturday morning women wearing scarves and men with beards, for the first impression I thought they may be Muslims, until I was told that these are Jews, because they were walking to their temples, etc. So what's wrong with that if Muslims are conservatives as well? The word conservative is not a bad word. I mean, it is a good word in a sense that this is a person who wants to conserve and observe his religious duties and obligations. So if somebody chooses to do that, we should be supportive to them. And instead of being oppressive and trying to repel them from fulfilling what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded. The Quran tells us about Prophet Harun and Musa alayhi salam, that Harun alayhi salam said to Musa, يَا ابْنَ أُمَّ لَا تَأْخُذْ بِلِحْيَتِي وَلَا بِرَأْسِي. Don't you grab my head and beard. So basically the prophets too used to keep the beard. And the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam in some hadith indicated that saving the beard, trimming the mustache is amongst the traditions of the pure nature, which all the prophets before Islam used to practice. So I hope and I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will facilitate for the Muslims and for our entire ummah to practice what please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Okay, we've come to the end of this episode of Ask Huda. Jazakallah Shaykh for all your answers. We really do appreciate them. And if you've got a question which is a bit detailed, a long question, you can always send it to us via email at ask@huda.tv. Jazakallah Khair for being with us today. Until next time, I'll leave you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
If my love is attached to thee, then from sins I will be free. Each time my heart will beat, your name will resound with heat. Allah is my heart's speech, your mercy is what I beseech. Keep in my heart your remembrance, and in your deen allow me to advance. Help me in my quest, permit me to pass the ultimate test. Help me in my quest, permit me to pass the ultimate test. Help me in my quest, permit me to pass the ultimate test. Help me in my quest, permit me to pass the ultimate